Welcome to Adventuring for Knowledge. This is Adventure Call number 1.
Guess what? This is Adventure Call number 2.
And what comes after 2, Manny?
Is it 3?
Yep, you got it. It's Adventure Call number 3. Last call.
Welcome to our podcast.
It's adventure time. Boom.
All right, so for those of you listeners who are out there, we are here sitting with Krysta Wark.
Do we pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Krysta?
And
Nice.
it's our first time meeting her. So we just had a little introduction conversation and
Setting the vibe.
in the vibe, and it's really nice. Suddenly I was nervous. I was like, oh man, I don't know what she looks like.
Yeah, because all of our other guests we knew.
Yeah.
Like we had one guest, Kimia, we knew from high school. Paula and Aaron, you knew from meeting outside. And so we're like, okay, how is this gonna go?
I feel like I
But
knew
it's
you
good.
already from your emails, so
Exactly.
you're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So Krysta
Thanks for
Wark,
having me.
yeah, you're welcome. Krysta Wark is a Canadian physiotherapist, passionate about helping providing global health. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, you went to India, to rural India, spent some time there, and you were very passionate about it, helping people. We want to hear all about it. But first of all, we want to hear just a little background about yourself. So, how old are you? I know it's, at least in Mexican culture, you never ask that question. So,
Okay.
how old are you? Where you grew up? You Canadian, or I don't know where you come from. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. So, as you mentioned, my name's Krysta Wark. I was born in Campbell River on Vancouver Island. So I was born and raised there, so Canadian. And I grew up in a family that was really outdoorsy. So we spent a ton of time camping, a ton of time outdoors, almost to the point where when I was a kid, I kind of didn't like some of the days when it was pouring rain or when we were skiing and it was so tiring and it was just exhausting. But now I'm very thankful that my parents did that because it created that deep-seated love for the earth and love for nature.
And habits, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up doing that, and I was also an athlete. So eventually I kind of transitioned away from figure skating and into cross-country skiing. And so I was a racer in high school.
You're a racer, country skiing.
Yeah, I raced not internationally, sorry. I raced in North America, so in the North American races and mostly at the national level. And I was on the BC team to go to nationals for a few years.
Have you seen cross-country skiing, Manny? Do you
No.
know what it is?
I think, no.
Can you explain to Manny and our listeners that don't know what cross-country
Absolutely.
skiing is? Manny's like, cross-country skiing.
Cross-country skiing isn't as popular in Canada as in Europe.
Yeah.
It's skiing on snow, but you go up and down hills. So you have to do a certain technique where you're striding your legs and you're using your arms with poles to get you up the hill. And then when you go down the hill, it looks similar to downhill skiing, where you kind of get into a deep tuck and you want to go quickly. But the skis are super skinny to be fast.
And they're flat, right? They don't.
Yeah.
Do they have a tip?
They have a tip,
Okay.
but they don't look like powder skis that are really
Yeah,
rockered.
Right.
They're more straight, and you can do one technique inside little tracks that the groomer makes, and then another one outside of the tracks where you looks like you're almost ice skating, but you have poles.
Well, that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
And very physically hard.
Yes.
Like running in snow. So
Are you
Really
gonna pick it up
difficult
now,
sport.
Manny?
I don't know, it's tempting.
Something
Yeah.
with Manuel is once he hears a new sport or he learns about a new sport, he goes out and tries it.
That's
I'm gonna try it
awesome.
Now, yeah.
Well,
Sounds very
I'll take you out.
Yeah,
I'm a
that'd be
coach,
awesome.
so
Well, there you
yeah.
go.
There you go, Manny.
So that was what I put a lot of my effort into in high school. Also, one of the reasons why I was exposed to the field of physiotherapy, because I injured myself at nationals, and I started to see a physio for myself for the first time, and it planted this seed in the back of my mind about that profession. And then after that, I headed to UBC and did my undergrad at UBC in cell and developmental biology and loved it. But I'm a pretty social person, and I didn't love being alone in the lab. I felt really isolated. So I did 2 years of work in conjunction with my degree. So in my 3rd and 4th year of my degree, decided that the lab environment wasn't for me. Finished my degree, went traveling for a year, and I went to South America with 2 of my girlfriends, and we went for 3 months. And it was my first time ever going anywhere abroad, and I'd wanted to travel for my entire life, and it was incredible.
Where did you go?
I had such a great time. We flew into Ecuador, went to Peru, then we went to Bolivia, a little bit into Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. And I learned some Spanish.
Ah, muy bien.
Sí. Pero solo un poquito.
Ah, es muy bueno.
Okay.
More than me.
And I did that trip thinking, okay, I'll figure out my next step with life. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And I asked a lot of people along that trip. So you meet so many travelers as you go. And I asked so many of them, how'd you decide what you do? What's your passion? Is your job your passion? And, how do you combine those two things, or do you keep them separate? And I had so many amazing conversations with people. And I was feeling so passionate about the earth, about the environment. And I was thinking, either I want to go into like environmental studies, like maybe do my master's in that and really pursue it, or physiotherapy, because it had still been in the back of my mind. But after discussing with all these people, I sort of thought through everything, and I decided that I wanted to do physiotherapy and keep my outdoor sport and enthusiasm to be just like for myself and my family and my friends, and kind of keep that separate from my profession a little bit. However,
they go hand
in hand.
Totally.
So they definitely cross
Especially
paths.
when you hurt yourself.
Exactly. Especially when you're out there. I mean, you're going to run into people who've hurt themselves out there. Right. And if you care about people, which most of us do, you're going to help them out. So there's been times when people have sprained their ankles, and so I'll pull out my physiotherapy knowledge and tape them up. Or one lady on the West Coast Trail, when I was out there, fell and broke her wrist, and I was there with 2 of my classmates during physio school, and we just quickly looked at it and said, we're pretty sure this is broken, you're going to need to get off the trail, and helped her splint it, and just emergency first aid stuff. So you're right, I mean, they definitely merge. But I think in healthcare, it's really great to be able to step away from your work and recharge, because if you aren't able to do that, then you can burn out very quickly.
Yeah, and I feel like that is key, and we try to do that every single week. Like we are recording on a Thursday, and I was so happy to hear why we are recording on a Thursday. It's because you adventure in the weekends, and you put that as a priority. It's one of your biggest values is, I need to recharge every weekend, and don't bother me, and I don't want to do anything with work, and that is absolutely amazing.
Totally, because we preach about designating one day specifically to go out and explore. Yeah. So we get together Sunday morning, record, and then go, and that's our adventure day.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, things like us.
Yes.
So I'm very happy. And what I've been hearing is that nature play a big role in your life with regards to choosing your career and playing sports also, which is also what we do. So I feel like now that we're getting to know you a little bit better, we're connecting the links, and I'm very excited for the rest of this podcast.
Totally. So I'm going to ask this question because I know it's really important to Manuel. So Manuel's and his partner, his wife, are planning to have a baby within the next year. And they were talking about pelvic health. And I've heard on one of your podcasts, you were talking to a specialist specifically about pelvic health. Can you expand on that? What is pelvic health, and what should someone preparing to have a baby do in order to have a successful pregnancy?
I would love to.
Yeah.
Pelvic health is my passion.
So when we ask you a question, I can see your eyes
just like
yes!
can't wait.
Okay, Hope, this is for you, okay?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Shout out Hope.
And for everyone else too.
Definitely.
So I have found my niche that I'm most passionate about in physiotherapy. It feels really good. I'm sure a lot of the listeners can relate to finding that kind of real passion.
Yeah.
And like you said, connection between your work and passion. Feel passionate about your work.
Exactly. Then it doesn't feel as much like work.
Totally. And
Yeah.
a lot of people lack that, which sucks.
Yeah. So I found that, and I'll just go a little bit into the backstory. When I was 17, I fell. This is my first big injury. I fell and broke my wrist, but I also landed on my tailbone. And so I hit my tailbone super hard, immediately peed my pants. But I was 17 years old. I wasn't going to tell anyone.
Yeah. Was this playing sports or?
This was at ski nationals. I wasn't
Skiing.
skiing,
Okay, yes.
but I was like jumping down off of a ledge and fell and onto the pavement
All your legs just
and
kicked
fell
out.
back. It was probably a little bit too high to be jumping off of, but again, I was 17. So, of course, I was devastated emotionally because I didn't get to race, and it was my last chance, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I landed on my tailbone. I went to my general physician, oh gosh, probably at least 15, maybe 20 times that year. And I kept saying, I can't hold my urine in. I kept peeing myself at school. I would get home from school and run to the washroom and pee myself. Like, I was incontinent of urine. Back then, I didn't know what incontinence was. And I just kept going back, getting tests for urinary tract infections. And basically, he just said to me, well, maybe you should stop changing sexual partners.
Yeah.
Really?
And I was like,
Assuming.
yeah. Like, and in my head, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not even having sex.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
I couldn't believe it. And that was the only info I got. So for 8-9 years, I just dealt with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how
And was it
to get help.
Was it that bad for 8 to 9 years?
It started to get better. It started to improve, but it got to the point where then, I would cough or I would sneeze, or sometimes on a long run, I would leak a little bit.
And that's what happens to Hope. Every time she sneezes, she pees a little.
Yeah, it's really common, but it's not normal for your body to function like that.
Yeah.
So then when I got into physiotherapy school, we had a lecture on it, and I was blown away that there was a field of physiotherapy that deals with pelvic health. And so that's what I started to see one, and I just thought, I need to do this, because I had felt so isolated in my condition, not knowing what to do and not really getting the medical care I needed, that I just felt so passionately about then providing that to as many people as I could throughout my career. And that's why I love talking about it. I'll talk about it all the time.
Yeah, you can
Very-
lighting up
Yeah.
just talking about it right now.
And it's very open. A lot of people keep that inside, but you're just going at it when I
Yeah,
love it.
and this is what I do all day. I just talk to people about pretty much the most intimate stuff.
Yeah.
Because your pelvis is responsible for regulating 4 main functions. Number 1, the muscles inside the pelvis hold up your organs. So when that's going wrong, your organs can fall out of you. So you can see things like your rectum falling out, your bladder falling, and if your muscles aren't working properly, that will just continue to happen and you might need surgery. But physiotherapy can mitigate that. Your bladder function is controlled by your pelvic floor. So if you are leaking your bladder, or if you have a hard time emptying your bladder, like you're not able to empty it. So some people will say, I'm retaining urine, what do I do? And then your sexual health. So for people with female reproductive organs, that's being able to achieve orgasm. And then if penetration is part of their intercourse, being able to tolerate penetration pain-free and accommodate for something inside the vaginal canal.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is bowel health. So being able to go to the washroom when you want to, not leaking feces if you don't want to, being constipated or having irritable bowel syndrome can all be regulated by the pelvic floor.
These are like basic and hardcore, true human things that happen
Super
every
important.
single
Every
day.
single day.
Every
And
single day.
a lot of people don't talk about it because they're scared to talk about it or seek help because it's,
Yeah.
It's
like you said,
embarrassing.
it can be embarrassing. So
Yeah. But wait, sorry, can I pause for a second? I missed one thing. So for the sexual health, people with male reproductive organs, your sexual health is regulated by your pelvic floor. So being able to achieve an erection, being able to maintain an erection, being able to ejaculate at the right time, so not prematurely, all of those are helped regulated by the pelvic floor. And then, of course, there can be some stuff associated with prostate health. So if you have to get a prostate removal or a prostate exam, sometimes that changes the musculature around the area, and then you need.
So I have a question. So are some people, because your issues came from a direct injury, are some people just born with a weak pelvis and have those kind of issues, or does it derive from a specific injury like yourself? That's
a great question. There's a wide variety of reasons why someone develops what we call pelvic floor dysfunction. So something's going wrong with one of those things I listed.
One of those four
functions, but then also pelvic pain is another dysfunction. So anything in the pelvic region that hurts, basically. So that can be from an injury, that can be from a really stressful event, whether it be at work, emotional, sexual violence or assault. Some people will develop dysfunction just from growing up in a family where it was really sexually repressed. Their muscles actually tighten up.
Really?
In order to kind of close off a little or protect themselves.
That's incredible.
That's intense.
Just human function right there that repel everything, even with words. I've heard this so many times that your body, like, for example, my wrist, if I'm going down the mountain, my wrist I'm gonna fall and I'm gonna break my wrist. The tension that people put on that wrist harms all the nerves and muscles around it. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it can, for sure. And then things like childbirth. So that's huge for women. Gender reconfirming surgery. So when they're transitioning over to changing the genitals to be from male to female or vice versa. Any sort of pelvic surgery. So prostate removal, bladder surgery.
What about sitting down?
No,
sometimes a lot of sitting.
My next question. Yeah,
that can definitely be a thing.
It's a great question.
Some people too, they think, this is the way I've always been. Like, I've always been constipated. So maybe there is a little bit of genetic, maybe there's a little bit of familial tendency there. But oftentimes we can trace it back to something. One bladder infection or one traumatic event.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of outcomes from this health deficiency. How or what is the best way to solve it, or things that we can do every day other than going to physio and getting knowledgeable about this?
To prevent these circumstances.
Right. So this is a tricky one, because in order to evaluate the pelvic floor muscles, and for me to be able to tell you how to properly activate them and when, what I typically do is an internal exam. So I would insert my finger vaginally for women and rectally for men. And sometimes I will examine rectally for women as well. So that's taking one of my gloved hands, putting lubricant on my finger, and then inserting it into the canal. And that way I can reach around inside the pelvis. The pelvis is like a bowl with a hole on the bottom, and I can literally reach around and feel all of the muscles on either side and tell you, well, that one's tight, that could lead to this later on. Or, you're not contracting well, you're not contracting coordinated or strong enough. And I can teach you how to properly do that. And then what I often do is I'll take that information that you learn and translate it into your functional life. So, Brodi, for you, playing soccer, if you're concerned that when you're cutting, you're not sure if your pelvic floor is firing properly, we would do exercises with me vocally talking you through what I already know your pelvic floor tends to do, and get you to make sure you're firing it properly and train you into that.
Interesting.
So for the average person, I don't know, looking at you two, if your muscles are tight, not coordinated, or weak. So just saying, do some Kegel exercises isn't appropriate.
Right. So in order to determine that, you would have to do a rectal or vaginal examination. You couldn't just look at my gait or watch me do certain movements and be like, okay, you're having an issue on this side, you're not contracting. You would have to do rectum or vaginal examination.
Most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people aren't comfortable with it.
Right. Because it's a touchy subject.
Exactly,
right?
Especially if there's been a history of trauma.
Yeah,
Totally.
It can get very intense.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll add a bunch of clues together. I love what you're saying. Look at the gait. There's other tests that I'll do that give me insight as to whether you're not stabilizing through your pelvis well. And then I can get somebody to give me feedback. Like, do you really feel like you're clenching?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're a tense person in general? That's going to provide a lot of insight. And I don't know the exact stat. I haven't checked on it recently, but typically younger people, so under 50, their pelvic floor, if there's something going wrong or if there is going to be something going wrong, it's tight. It's too tight. Kind of like how people get tightness in their neck when they're stressed out.
Yeah.
Same thing with the pelvis. But then later on in life, it's usually too weak. Those are the general trends you see. But of course, there's always exceptions to that rule.
Yeah. And let's just put out there, let's figure out what to do after you get tested and we determine things that you need to work on. What are the things that people can work on? Examples, like you mentioned Kegel exercises. So what are those? Is there any other exercises after the test that you would recommend to people?
Really good question. So there's a lot of different exercises that I may or may not recommend depending on what's going on with the person.
Yeah.
So if the muscles are too tense, I will recommend ways for people to relax them. So oftentimes calming down the nervous system. So doing things like meditation or yoga and deep breathing, that really helps people be able to really relax those muscles. And the goal of that is to be able to move your pelvic floor muscles through their full range of motion. So as they tighten, they lift up towards your head.
Yeah.
And as they relax, they expand down towards your feet. So I often get people to imagine it's like an elevator or a trampoline that's kind of springing up and down. So the exercises would be targeted at finding that full movement first, and then what that would physically look like for you as an individual is you might, if it's really difficult, you might go lie down with your knees bent and try to tighten and relax and try to move those muscles with your breath. So as you breathe in, you elongate those muscles, let them relax. And as you breathe out, you tighten. And for some people, that's enough for it to click. And for others, they'll need to insert a finger into their vagina so they can feel if it's squeezing or if it's releasing. And then to go from there, you could even take, we have biofeedback machines that we use where little sensors will tell you if you're activating your muscle or if you're relaxing your muscle. Because of course it's not as simple as seeing your elbow bend, right? You like can't see it.
Clenching your butt or is that how
yeah. So a really easy way to target it would be, okay, try to tighten your anus, really squeeze your anus. And then to relax it, you would try to open your anus, almost like you're trying to have a bowel movement.
Yeah.
And for men, a cue I usually use is, if you go to walk into water and your testicles hit the cold water and they get sucked up towards your body, that's tightening the pelvic floor. That's that movement. So you try to lift your testicles up. And you can do that in sitting too.
Yeah.
And then you try to relax down and open your anus.
That's very interesting. And so Kegel balls are just balls that you can insert. That's because I've heard this before.
Okay, yeah. So
Manny is very fixated on Kegel balls.
fair enough.
Because I heard about the subject, right?
And Hope was talking about it.
And Hope was talking about it, so I'm debating going to buy some for Hope.
Right. So a Kegel is basically a pelvic floor muscle contraction.
Yeah.
It's a fancy way to say you're tightening those muscles and then relaxing them. Most people don't need anything inserted into their vagina. So there are vaginal weights that you can use where you insert them and they create a little bit of heaviness. So it's more difficult than contracting against gravity.
Okay, I see.
So that I've actually very rarely given those to anyone because usually it's not the most functional for people unless they're more of like a weightlifter. They're having to hold a lot more weight through their pelvis through weightlifting. But sometimes something that inserts into the vagina can just be helpful because it gives somebody that feedback of if there is a ball in there and they try to squeeze, they can feel that they're squeezing on that ball versus not. Because like you're saying, it's kind of hard to know if you're tightening or if you're relaxing. And some people, they'll learn that without that extra feedback, but sometimes it's helpful to have that added feedback. Usually, if it's okay, if you're at home and you can insert your finger, that's a little bit better because now you're feeling that feedback on your finger itself. So you're feeling how hard you're squeezing. So it's just a little bit better. But there's lots of little tools that you can use.
Totally. Could Kegel balls be damaging for some?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if the person's issues are arising from pelvic floor tension. So they're already too tight. And then you're trying to tighten. And this is actually something that happened where people were being just prescribed Kegels. So an example would be after childbirth, do your Kegels.
I've read this so many times, and because we bought books about pregnancy, and then they recommend after childbirth get some Kegel balls, and I'm like, I don't know about that. So
yeah, you got to be a bit skeptical.
Yeah, so it might not be feasible to do it,
and it might not be the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's I think one of the reasons why pelvic floor physiotherapy has really evolved, where we've gone, well, if we give everyone Kegels, some people get worse, some people get better, and some people there's no change. And so we looked at, well, why is that? And realized that most people, when they try to do a Kegel, do it wrong. And then if they do it right, it might not be the right exercise for them.
Yeah.
And then those people that get better, they're doing it right and it was the right exercise for them. So that was just luck.
Yeah.
Right?
So what about holding your pee? Because I read this as well. You develop your muscles if you hold your pee as well. Is that a thing
or a myth?
Or a myth?
And do you mean if you have the urge to go and you try to hold it in?
Yeah, that one. And then another one when you're currently peeing and then you're like, nope, let's cut it out. People think that they're exercising their pelvic by doing that.
Yes.
Is that true?
That's a very bad thing to do.
Yeah.
For your pelvis. If you want to see how strong your pelvic floor is, so you're stopping your stream of urine midstream, that doesn't really tell you how strong your muscles are, and in fact it really confuses your bladder. So now your bladder is thinking, wait, can I empty when the muscles are tight? It's not supposed to, but now it's going, oh, wait a second, now the muscles are tight and I can still empty. So you're actually starting to train the bladder to be able to leak when you don't want it to. So that historically has been told to people, oh, try doing that. See how strong you are. And we're now saying, no, do not do that. It's not good for your pelvic health at all.
Interesting. Is there a certain position that is better for peeing? And bowel movements?
Yeah, so for peeing, it's better to be sitting.
Even for men?
Because then you're able to relax your pelvic floor more when you're sitting than when you're standing.
You engage, your core's engaged standing straight up. Right.
Yeah. However, men often stand urinating and there's no problem. That you as men also have longer urethra, so that's more helpful to maintain urinary continence. So urinary incontinence is less common in men than in women. And then for emptying your bowel, this is actually something that most people don't know, but this is so good to know. So you want to be sitting in a squat position. So countries like India and other countries in Asia, they have squat toilets. And that's
in Thailand.
Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect for your pelvic floor. So what we have to do here in Canada and North America are more civilized,
westernized countries.
Western cultures, where we think we need to sit up on a throne. what you should be doing is sit on your toilet, but have your feet propped on a footstool. So you're actually then physically in that squat position. And what that position does is it allows you to slump your lower back a little bit, and it actually unkinks your bowel. So your bowel, when you're standing or upright, sitting, has a kink, almost not quite a 90-degree angle, but a quite sharp angle where one of your muscles will cinch your bowel so that you can't leak feces, which is great. We love that we have that. But then if you're trying to have a bowel movement past this kind of kink, it's really difficult. And that's when people start to strain. And that's when you might have issues where you get hemorrhoids, or your bowel can start to be pushed out, or you might get organ prolapse somehow. And a real simple fix is you prop your feet up. Now that kink unkinks, your bowel is now straighter. The muscle is no longer cinching on it, and your bowel movement can just slide out instead of you having to push it out.
Through that kink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can use like a classic, bathroom footstool, or there's a fancy version called the squatty potty.
Squatty potty.
Yeah.
And it's great.
A squatty potty.
When's Hope's birthday, man?
Yeah, you're gonna have to get one of those for every toilet, and it basically just looks kind of like a U shape. So once you're done with it, you just tuck it.
Oh, that's nice.
You kind of push it close to the back of the bowl or the toilet, and so it's a little bit more discreet. And then you pull it out when you need it. Yeah. And I like the Squatty Potty brand because the branding that they have and the way they describe why it works is completely accurate.
Yeah. That is so nice.
So say a regular toilet, you say it is squatting. Is it a regular toilet's too high to just squat over the toilet, hovering over the toilet, or do I need to be dropped further down in my hips in order to get away from that pinch?
Yeah, so you need to be in a deep squat position. Like if you were to squat in the woods, completely down, that's the position you need to be in.
More than 90 degrees on your knees. And
exactly. So as you're sitting there, your knees should be, almost close to your shoulder height.
Wow. Like
a little bit lower.
Yeah. A 20, 30 degree angle, yeah. So there you have it, everyone. Healthy ways on how to do bowel movement, healthy ways how to pee, which is super key. And all this knowledge helps immensely in basic human functions
and we don't even think about that.
We don't.
I've never even.
I
didn't know I was taking a crap incorrectly. I did not know that. And
it's very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
And it benefits your health immensely.
Okay, so sorry, Manny. So before we get over, because I know you're going to transition on to global health and get into that. But
know me well.
before we get away from that, I have a question about another pelvic question.
Yeah.
So I'm type 1 diabetic as well. Is there anything that I need to worry about or be aware of with diabetes connected to my pelvic health, or not?
That's a good question.
Yeah, really good question. Well, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think type 1 diabetics can be more prone to bladder infections and yeast infections.
Totally.
Depending on how well controlled your blood sugar is. With anything like that, if there's an infection or if there's any sort of pain in the area, so my younger brother is also a type 1 diabetic, and he had a kidney stone last year, the year before, so he was suffering from so much pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the same thing with a pain response in that area, it can change how the muscles are firing. So if you went through a period of time maybe when you weren't managing your blood sugar as well, and you had maybe a few urinary tract infections or something like that, those muscles could have started to fire slightly differently. And that could alter your function. It might not. But if there's any warning signs, that's when you would just go to a pelvic floor physio right away.
Go to Krista.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you know me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot you can do right away. When I'm seeing things that I'm having a difficult time treating, it's when people have waited years and years and years.
Because they're embarrassed about the subject.
Yeah, or they didn't even know.
Or they
a
didn't
lot
know.
of people are so angry that it took them so long to even hear about a pelvic floor physio. So they often will look at me in the first session and go, why didn't anyone tell me about you before? And they're annoyed.
Yeah.
Which fair enough, right? And then we can work through stuff, and usually we can resolve things. Sometimes it's too late to fully resolve things, but yeah, so I went off on a tangent there. Basically, so the pelvic pain piece can alter what your muscles are doing, and then just because it's your pelvis that has muscles just like the rest of your body, the same principles would apply. So if your blood sugar isn't managed as well, and then your tissues aren't getting the sugar they need, your muscles, like when my brother was diagnosed, he was getting so much leg cramping because his blood sugar was so high, but he wasn't getting any energy to his muscles. So you can imagine that's probably happening to your pelvic floor muscles as well. So that would be my not super detailed answer.
That's a good answer, though.
Yeah.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you have all this knowledge and you want to share it with everyone. And is that why you started a podcast? So Krysta has a podcast, it's a global health podcast. Is that the main reason why you did that, in order to share all this knowledge about physio in general and pelvic health, or is there another reason?
So the reason I started the podcast was I wanted to gain more knowledge.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of knowledge.
Too, yeah.
Exactly. So I recognized my gap in knowledge when I was wanting to get into global health work. I had been working for a year as a physiotherapist, and I was researching, I was talking to different mentors and friends, trying to figure out how to even start a career in global health. I didn't know how to bridge that gap between wanting to do it and then actually doing it.
And what is global health?
Great question. So global health is basically a sector of healthcare where we are concerned about health worldwide. It doesn't matter, you ignore country borders. It's trying to improve the health of the general population in the world and trying to bring health equity to the populations in the world. And health equity is basically trying to ensure that people have similar or the same healthcare access and resources, no matter where they are and no matter what their region is going through. So historically, what a lot of people think global health work is there's the earthquake in Haiti and everyone goes and helps in Haiti for a bit and leaves.
Yeah.
Disaster relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one type of global health. But there's so many different ways that you can look at global health. You can even look at your home city, and you know that there's a subset of the population in the city that doesn't have health equity compared to most people. Yeah. So they don't have access to the right resources. They're not properly educated enough to access the resources that might exist for them. They don't have the money to pay for it. Or they are actually from a different culture themselves. So they're maybe immigrants to that area and they don't speak the language. They don't understand how the healthcare system works. So that happens even in big city centers. So I've interviewed people on the podcast who work in their home city, but they're working at an immigration center. So they're helping people access healthcare who aren't sure how to without that kind of assistance. So you can basically practice global health work anywhere you are. And you can do disaster relief, you can do conflict zone work where there's going to be, a higher prevalence of disability. So I'm thinking more so on the physio side where there's going to be disability. Yeah. And you can also go to zones where there's outbreaks like cholera or communicable diseases. And I'm trying to think, remote and rural areas in your own country as well. So you can think there are lots of towns in BC alone, British Columbia, where there isn't a physio at all.
Yeah.
There's a job posting, but nobody wants to live there because it's too small.
As well as Indigenous bands.
Exactly.
I think that, I don't know, but I would assume that is one of the bigger issues. I know that there's lack of education and healthcare present in those communities.
Definitely.
Especially in northern BC.
Absolutely. And there are programs that people have started for Indigenous health. And I think at least one, if not 3 of my podcast episodes, I've interviewed people who work in that area of Indigenous health, where they're doing telerehabilitation. So that's using video software or phone calls to consult with the local healthcare worker, whether it be a nurse or somebody like that, to provide some rehabilitation for their community. Or they're physically flying in and doing it. But these are really remote communities. And so these communities are facing different health issues than people in the city are facing. People in the city are facing their own issues as well.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I feel like what I'm hearing is that global health has a lot of branches, and you can
Yes.
enter whichever branch you want, even in your own community. There's people that do not have the resources to go to physio, for example. I go to physio because I have the resources, but a lot of people here do not. And especially in other countries like Mexico, there's not a lot of people who have these resources. So global health is trying to help provide the knowledge of health of the human body to everyone. And in your field, physiotherapy, there is a big portion to global health, and that's what you wanted to do. And why did you want to do global health?
That is that's my favorite question that we ask people, is your why.
Yeah.
Right.
So the why did you want to do global health? And then I'm going to extend that question is, what is your overall why for the direction that you are heading?
So why global health?
It can be like, I feel like this question is very interesting and very hard to answer. You really have to like dig
Deep down into your soul.
into your soul and look at your past and your present and your future and see where you want to go. And you can take as long as you want.
Yep.
We can clip the video or the recording.
So another way of putting it is, what drives you?
Okay, so why global health can be traced to a specific moment when I was in Ecuador, and we were on a bus or in a car, I can't remember which, but we were in an automobile, and I glanced over, and a young boy, he was maybe 11 or 12, he was disabled. I can't remember exactly his disability. It was something to do with his leg, though, and he was trying to hop around. And he didn't have crutches. He didn't have any form of support. There were lots of steps everywhere, no ramps. It just seemed like now that he had this injury, his world around him was so inaccessible. He was facing so many barriers to participating in school, in his social life, in
Everyday functionality.
everything.
Yeah.
And this was on the trip that I mentioned earlier, where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to make my impact on the world. And as soon as I saw that, I felt like there's a big issue here. There's a global issue where there are people who don't have access to the resources they need. They don't have the healthcare they need. Something as simple as giving this guy crutches may have opened up his world. I didn't understand the intricacies of how all of that would work. It would be really easy for me to fly back and hand this one guy crutches, but that's not a sustainable approach. That was my moment when I thought, I want to somehow help this.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I have no idea how to get started in that, but I went to physio school knowing I wanted to do something in global health.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what it was about. I'd heard about You know, do you remember when we were younger and there were those commercials and it was like starving kids in Ethiopia and they had the huge bellies and it was just like, please give money. I remember seeing this thinking, there's gotta be a better way for us to impact this than to just give an organization money.
Yeah, we don't know where that money's going.
Where's it going?
It's definitely not going to go directly to the kid we see on the TV.
Definitely not. And when you're using somebody's suffering to try to get people's donations, that just I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. And I actually, this is a bit of a sidebar, but when I was in high school, one of my best friends passed away. She had leukemia. And a physiotherapist who worked with her deeply impacted her. She couldn't walk. And her physiotherapist, after her cancer treatment, she couldn't walk. Her physiotherapist retaught her how to walk. And she always, my friend, her name was Sam, she always brought up how impactful this physiotherapist was on her life. She was able to then walk through the halls in high school instead of having to stay home. And that changed the last few years of her life because she got to be there when all the fun social stuff happened. She got to be there in class and learn. And that has always kind of really sunk into me. She passed away, so obviously that was incredibly impactful in my life because I loved her so much. And I recognized how big of a role a physiotherapist can have in one person, the people around them, their immediate family, their friends, their community, and how that difference can propagate. And after she passed away, we were asked to be on a telethon because she had been one of the kind of guest hosts the year before. And they asked us to just kind of stand there as they told the story of how she died and, you know, her battle against cancer. And it was really, it felt horrible, honestly, to be standing up there so grief-stricken and for people to be kind of exploiting that and asking for donations by, like, you know, zooming into our sad faces. So I had a negative experience with that in my life. I wanted to delve into how can we now empower these people? How can we empower people all over the world who maybe have suffered, who can't participate in what they want to participate in, who they can't do that meaningful thing that makes them who they are. And I wanted to be able to provide that knowledge and guide people to their passions, basically.
That is probably the best way I've ever
I was just going to say that when we ask people, like, what is your why?
That's what we're looking for.
That is exactly
it's
what we're
giving me the
looking
chills
for.
right now.
Because we've asked people that why with that question before, and you can tell it's just on the surface. But the why shouldn't come from your surface. It should come from, like, your
soul,
gut, your soul.
And
Manny's tearing up.
Yeah, I'm tearing up. I swear, like, this is a very powerful subject because whatever you do in life, and I feel like you've navigated through this very, very good and very powerful. I'm at the stage that I want to learn the skills, and not for myself, not to be greedy, but to overall help this world be a better place in remote areas, like you said, and to people that do not have the knowledge and skills and resources to do it. And I feel like that is branded in you, the fact that you wanted to help, so you went to physio school, you learned the skills, and now you want to share that skill and knowledge with the people with less resources in order to better help this world. And that is very powerful. And I encourage, if anyone out there is listening to this, to do, or at least try to approach that mentality of, I'm not doing this, I'm not studying for myself to get rich, I'm studying for this world.
To make a change in some way.
To make a change in this way. And that's very powerful. And thank you for that.
Yeah,
I was tearing up.
Yeah, no, I'm reflecting on it. It's like, that is a why.
That is a why.
That is a why.
So how does someone get involved with global health? How? What is the best way to do it?
Do you need any credentials? Say, can I go and get involved in global health right now?
Is there any courses out there, websites? How?
Well, that's the golden question. That's why I started my podcast.
Yeah.
Specifically for Canadians, because I was thinking, how do we do this? So the biggest piece of advice that I've received from global health professionals who they've made this their career is get involved with an organization that has values in line with your own. There are lots of great organizations out there, and there are lots of not so great ones, and you need to be able to critically analyze that. So connecting with someone who you know in the field is great, and even just accessing my podcast, the Global Physio Podcast.
It's linked in our resources tab, by the way.
And then
Thank
our
you.
show notes.
Thank you. You can connect with global health professionals. Most of my interviewees have agreed to have their contact information available on my show notes, and you can contact them with questions like that. So connecting with the community is huge. In Canada, there are courses for some health professionals in order to prepare for global health work. Not all. There aren't really any for physiotherapists. There are some courses specific to the university that you go to, but there is currently a course, like a licensing course, being developed by the Global Health Division of my professional association, so the Canadian Physiotherapy Association. And they're developing coursework that you can do in order to gain the skills that you need.
Yeah.
The full answer to your question is you don't need to do anything in order to participate in global health work. People have literally gone to a country and, quote, I'm doing air quotes, helped, because they're really coming from a good place.
Yeah.
They really do care about people and they really want to help. But unfortunately, if you're going to a country where things aren't well regulated, you might be doing things way over your head, way out of your skill set. And maybe you're doing something that's part of your skill set. I could go as a physiotherapist and start treating someone. I could go and start treating that kid in Ecuador.
Yeah.
But I'm coming from a good place, but I'm potentially doing more harm than good. Where now I'm working as a physiotherapist there, so am I taking away the job of another physiotherapist? Are they no longer able to do that? If I'm bringing things with me, so say I'm bringing crutches, canes, things like that, is there actually a local manufacturer who I'm now putting out of business?
Yeah.
There's so many intricacies to it that if you do just go without an organization or without, really delving into how you're going to do it and really communicating with the locals, you might not be making the difference that you think you are.
So you recommend going with an organization?
Absolutely. Finding one that works for you and asking them what they require in terms of your skill set and being able to demonstrate those skills. So I'm in the process of developing my skill set, my core competencies. There's been literature that's come out to tell you what your core competencies need to be a global health professional. And developing my clinical skills is one, but that's only one. Developing my teaching skills, my ability to research, my knowledge translation skills, my leadership skills.
There's so much.
It's a really wide skill set.
So for us,
I have a question before
Yeah,
leading. Just kind of, those are all barriers that you could face. What you were just saying, like going in and so you say stepping on people's toes. When you went to India, or when you were preparing to go in on your first global health mission, what was the biggest barrier, and what were other barriers that you faced?
So I went as a student, a physical therapy student, on a clinical placement in India. And I went with a Canadian physiotherapist and 3 other students. I would say the biggest barrier I initially faced was lack of preparation. I received some info, what to pack, what to wear. That was pretty much it. Maybe something about the currency. I didn't feel like I had any global health knowledge. I just felt like I was going internationally to do physiotherapy.
Yeah.
Right.
I wasn't educated on the cultural competencies I would need. So something as simple as some religions don't like for you to touch their feet.
Right.
Nobody told me that, right? So I faced those barriers initially. And then what I faced when I was there, and we all faced this, was that there was a bit of a disconnect between what our expectations were going in, what our role would be and what we would learn, and what the local organization in that local community, what they were expecting from us. And it was a mismatch.
Yeah.
There hadn't been good enough communication, and that posed a barrier for basically the entire 5 weeks that we were there. Because we hadn't set out those expectations and it hadn't been clearly communicated, a lot was left unsaid, and there were some people who were, offended isn't the right word, but they were unhappy with what our role was, basically.
Yeah.
On which side? On the people from India or the Canadian side were unhappy?
More so the locals. One of the local, they're called community-based rehab workers or rehabilitation workers. So they're not physiotherapists, but they're trained in physiotherapy, occupational therapy, nutrition, and they go around, and they mostly in this organization work with kids. And so they go to the local communities and they give parents some exercises to do, give them some nutrition advice. So they have a regular caseload of people that they go and see. And we came in on our learning experience, and we were expecting, we're just going to be here to observe,
shadow,
learn
almost.
from you guys.
Right.
Well, and also kind of collaborate together. But what was happening to this one guy, he said, you guys come once a year, students come, and every time we collaborate, but it's always different information because we're all different, right? We're all bringing something different to the table. Even though we're from the same school, it's slightly unique. So when we give him all that information, he became confused. And also what was ending up happening was that his clients were losing trust in him because these Western people, Westerners, the Canadians, North Americans were coming. There was this mindset in the organization, like they're coming to like fix the hard cases. They know their stuff, and they hyped our arrival for the clients, which is fair enough. I mean, it's a huge deal in a rural community that these people are flying in internationally to help out your organization.
Totally.
So I totally see that they would be stoked about it.
Yeah.
But then, of course, that made some of the clients go, well, why would I listen to you now? The Canadians are gone. I thought they knew more than you. And he was having trouble kind of keeping his clients engaged after we left. And that was just one individual that brought that up, but I thought it was a really great point.
That's an awesome point, and I feel like if you want to get involved with global health, you have to be mindful of these possible barriers that you're going to face, and you have to be flexible and adaptable and have good core competencies that you can communicate, and it might not be in the same language, and having that open mind of anything can happen, but I'm gonna do my 1,100% and remember your value, which is global health and helping people. And for example, I want to know, like for Brodi and for myself, I'm an engineer, Brodi's a business student, graduate. How do we get involved if we're not in the physical therapy or medical fields? Can they use us?
We're not under that umbrella.
Can they use us?
I mean, you could fall under global health a little bit. So some of these organizations, if you look at their job postings, they're not for clinicians. They're for project leaders, and sometimes they actually need infrastructure built. So like engineers, for example. But you could look at it kind of under that bigger umbrella of global development and quote humanitarian work, where you're helping develop the capacity of the local community.
Yeah.
Historically, where you would maybe see an engineer going to help would be you're going to go to Africa and you're going to help build houses.
Yeah.
So you'll get hands-on, even if you're not, a carpenter or something,
Yeah.
right? And that is different from global health. That is more, volunteer work. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's helpful, but a lot of times that also faces the same potential issues that I mentioned before, where maybe you're taking away work from the locals, maybe you're bringing in supplies that otherwise could have been sourced locally. So there's a lot of issues with that potentially as well. So the best way to get involved in something like that would be to find an organization that's already worked in collaboration with the community to figure out what their needs are, and then just help them develop their own grassroots programs. So maybe you're teaching the teachers how to then spread the knowledge in their community, and it can be with almost anything.
Yeah.
Almost any skill set or knowledge.
Totally. Because you were saying that you're trying to broaden your knowledge on not just physiotherapy, but leadership and other things, because global health requires not just your knowledge in a medical field.
Exactly.
Right.
So get out there, listen to Krystas podcast, and find those organizations and research them, and look through the job postings that they have, and try to identify yourself with one of them, contact them, learn as much as possible, and work on your core competencies that the organization can probably tell you, hey, you need this, 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 and that. And
Totally.
yeah.
So we're going to transition away from global health and then come back to Krysta. So besides work, we talked about you like to be active. What exactly do you like to do besides work, and how do you separate work and play?
My passion outside of work is being in the outdoors. And for me specifically, in the winter, that means backcountry skiing.
Nice.
So a marriage between cross-country skiing and downhill skiing, where you're moving yourself through the mountains. And I love the challenge of that. And I'm a little bit of a romantic in that sense, where if I'm getting
junkie?
to a bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Romantic adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to work for my views. So
Yeah.
I really love that feeling of you get to the top of a mountain and it was all self-propelled. You got yourself there, and you have to be really disciplined in the winter. You need to know your avalanche knowledge. You need to have the right gear. You need to eat enough food, you need to drink enough water, or things can turn bad quickly because it is so cold. So I really like that. It really makes me focus on the task at hand and therefore clear my head. And I just simply love being in the mountains. They are my happiest place. I feel most like myself there. So then conversely, in the summer, my big thing is I like to do hiking.
Nice.
And both those sports I will do multi-day trips. So next week I'm going to National Park, and we're going to ski for 6 days. So we're putting everything we need for 6 days in our backpacks, and we're going to ski between huts that have been built out in the mountains.
Super cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
on the island, what's your favorite mountain? And then off the island, so on the island, what's your favorite ski mountain? And then off the island, what's your favorite ski mountain? Then on the island, what's your favorite hike? And then off the island, what's your favorite hike?
Brodi just wants to do everything.
I was like, all right, sign me up.
Oh, I don't know if I can choose a favorite mountain.
Yeah.
Probably my most meaningful mountain for skiing on the island would be Mount Albert Edward, which you can see from Mount Washington, which is where the ski resort is.
Yeah. Right.
And it's that kind of sloping one. And I've looked at it my whole life because I grew up skiing on Mount Washington. And I wanted to get on top of that mountain so bad. It was driving me. So this year on skis, we went, my partner and I, we skied to the summit in one day and down, and it was a beautiful sunny day. The views were amazing. The snow was perfect. It was just completely magical.
That's awesome.
So that's my favorite one in the winter. And in the summer, I don't know. I think my favorite one is probably the tallest one on the island, just because it was the biggest challenge.
What's that?
The Golden Hind.
We got to do it.
We gotta
You
do
do.
it.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
stunning, and it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
It's pretty exposed at the top.
How
because
long
it's,
is it?
Kilometer-wise, I don't remember. The trail that we took, there are 2 different access points. The one that we took, I think, was 45 kilometers. Don't remember exactly, maybe
That sounds
30.
Awesome.
And it's, I think, about 2,100 meters in height. And then off the island, well, I haven't explored as much as I would like to. So I've skied out near Nelson, BC,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed that. And I've also skied near Pemberton, BC, also really amazing. And hiking, I'm trying to think. We hiked on Mount Rainier in the States. And that was so amazing, and it made me want to stand on top of Mount Rainier really badly.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try to do that this summer.
That's a big mountain.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
That's a really big mountain.
I like just getting on top of the mountain.
I'm pretty sure Mount Rainier is snow capped all year round, is it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we were talking before that you find these adventures like as an opportunity to recharge.
Yes.
How do you feel? Is that essential to you, recharging every week?
It is absolutely essential for me. And some of my friends say, wow, you're so busy. You're always going away. And I can't imagine not, because when I go out into nature, when I get out mostly into the backcountry where there's not a lot of people, there's no cell service, it's really beautiful terrain, that's when I reconnect to myself and I feel grounded again. It's the way that I have really connected to my soul and my spirit, and basically exactly where I feel like I belong.
Yeah.
And once I have a weekend of that, even if I had to drive 6 hours to 10 hours each way, I feel so much more rested and recharged than if I were to stay at home and be inside most of the
Be
weekend.
static physically and mentally. 'cause
Yeah.
everything's just, we're both of us are this exactly same
Yeah.
like that. We need to go out. We need to do something. We need to ground ourselves and just disconnect from everybody and everything.
Exactly. And it's just like clearing out all the noise. Like I find, because I am a really empathetic person, I think that's what makes me good at being a physiotherapist. But it also makes me take on the energy of people around me. So removing myself from that, being out, running into a few people, but mostly just connecting with nature and that energy really just kind of brings me back down. And then I can go into my work week ready to go, ready to kind of transfer that energy over and
You're
away.
bringing that space into your
Exactly.
workspace.
And
Exactly.
I love what you said with regards to energies, because physiotherapy and any healthcare out there, including childcare, you're sucking all the energies from everyone and everything. And if you don't take that time to put another energy, like nature, which is the most powerful energy out there, it can suck you down. And
Oh, yeah.
it can put a barrier in your passion. And I feel like reconnecting the energy of the earth and putting it into your forehead, into your mind, is very important. And that's what we talked about in our second episode. And I have a question. Do you ever think of global health and work when you are out in nature, or it's like a switch, like I'm not gonna think about it at all? Does it motivate you? Do you find ideas when you're hiking?
Or do you think about it the most when you're out there and you're away from everybody else and it's just you and your partner and and nature?
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that before, but Yes. So when I'm working midweek, I think about my clinical practice. I think about my clients that I see. I think about my day-to-day task at hand. On the weekends, I think more about global health. I take a step back from my day-to-day and I think about the big picture of health.
Yeah.
And where I'm going with my career, what I'm doing, what my goals are. And I get moments of clarity out there when I'm not distracted by all the other stuff. And I've come to really great realizations. I've made really big decisions out there, just one foot in front of the other on the trail, thinking through it or chatting through it with my partner and trying to work my way through, how I'm going to solve that problem or how I'm going to prepare myself for that next big thing.
I think that is so powerful when you have a big decision in your life, and I feel the best way to do it is get out there in nature with no outside judgment, no outside distractions, and just yourself and your feet and your skis in your case. And then you can make those decisions because they are truly going to come from your soul.
And like you said, with a clear mind.
Yeah. And without anyone else influencing it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of asking people that whose opinions I really value, their advice. But at the end of the day, those sorts of decisions need to come from within. They need to be true to you, or they're not going to be the right decision necessarily.
Well, there you have it. If you have a great decision to make in your life, get out there and figure it out from your soul. You got anything else, Mr. Brodi?
No, that feels so good.
I feel so good. That was a very good episode, and I feel very
awesome.
recharged just from listening to that. And I feel like we need to be more intense, like Krysta. Go out there to the biggest mountains.
We need to step up our game.
We need to step up.
We're stepping up our game. We're gonna join our mountain equipment co-op, and we're gonna go buy all the backpacking stuff that we need, all mountaineer, avalanche gear. We're gonna get out there, man, and we need to step up our game.
That'd be great. But I would like to say that that's my thing, but man, everyone's thing's so different, right?
Totally, yeah. That is so true.
And I just think it's so inspiring when I talk to someone whose thing or their passion is so different from mine, and it's so neat to hear how that recharges them. But I would love if you guys got more into mountains.
I think our thing is trying new things. We just like getting out there, and like Manny's now you're doing diving, right?
Nice.
I love diving. It's because you get out there
and you didn't even know exactly. You just tried it, and we're gonna go diving.
And I feel like you mentioned, Krysta, it might not be that your thing is hiking. It might not be that your thing is diving, but the key thing is to keep trying new things until you find your passion. You find your perfect place where you can recharge. Like you mentioned, it's amazing to hear how people recharge themselves. For some people, it's even going and taking a Taekwondo class. Like I heard a coworker saying that. He's like, I go once a week. I'm not that good, but I find that like it's exercise and I connect with my mind. And I was like, wow, that's your way of recharging. I've never thought about that. Some other people like playing chess.
Right.
It's like, wow. So finding that thing to do. I think my thing is becoming making a podcast every week. What do you?
It is. We've been
thing.
pretty active on that, and when we first started this podcast, it was kind of like, okay, let's see how it goes. But then we really started getting into it, and then it's like, okay, this is really awesome because we created this platform to be able to talk to so many different kinds of people about so many different kinds of subjects. And so it's awesome just to be able to broaden our mind and our knowledge.
Exactly. And don't you like that it gets the conversation started? You already have a conversation starter. You don't have to go through that. Oh, so what do you do? Those kind of You're just like, all right, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's have those really meaningful conversations.
And that's what we're all about. And Manny and I have talked about this. Like, how do we get through to people and not talk just from the surface? How do we actually have those deep conversations and deep connections with people and have these meaningful conversations? Because I think that lacks a lot in our society today.
Oh yeah.
Because of all of the influencers that man has created.
And I think the key thing is to be open. Like we were able to have a meaningful conversation with you, I believe, today, because you were open, extremely open on everything.
Yeah,
Open-minded.
open, non-judgmental is another thing.
Open to new
Yes.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you guys do a great job of asking questions that are probing into that. And you're both really, you seem both very interested in what I was talking about. So that really helps too. I think it helps to create a safe space for someone to feel
Totally.
like they
Totally.
can open up.
And that was our goal and discussion is how do we create a space for our guests to come in and be able to talk as openly as we can. Do we host it here, or do we go to them so they feel more comfortable in their environment, or do we? I think this is the perfect environment because you say, oh, it's like, I like the light, it's nice, it's clean,
It's beautiful.
right? So I think this is the space that we've created here. I think we've got a lot out of people, and it's really good
Yeah.
Do you have any questions
for us. Yeah.
Since you are a master podcaster out there.
I feel like I have a lot of questions. So I guess one of my questions for you, Brodi,
Yeah.
would be, how has it been difficult for you to navigate the healthcare system and your own health journey with having a chronic illness like type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, it has. So
Yeah.
I'm turning 25 in a month, less than a month now, and I've just been dropped off my extended medical with my family. So now I'm going through the process of creating my own pharmacare. I'm on my own Blue Cross, and I don't have all the same benefits that I reaped before when I was on my mom's amazing extended benefit package. And so now I'm trying to just figure out what the best path is for me. So I actually have a nurse that's coming in to talk to me on Monday, just to help me map out exactly the question you just asked me. Funny you asked that. Is to map out what I need to do in order to be.
Same.
Yeah. So
I
I'm
didn't
pretty.
know that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty active on taking care of my body because I'm an athlete and I want to do that as a profession, and I have been trying to do that for the last couple of years, and
Right.
played at a high collegiate level as a type 1 diabetic athlete, and dealing with all the stigmas and sometimes
so
this
challenging.
fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. And Manny's seen me go through it because I've known him for so long, and yeah, it's a challenge, but I like a challenge, and that's my why. Like I feel so like deep down in me is I'm gonna prove all the people that said, oh, you won't be able to do that because of this, or it's gonna be really hard, or why are you doing this, right?
I feel like
I love that.
when it comes to decisions like that, it is very important to have good mental health, mental and psychological health. When you're doing physical exercise, when you're doing anything, it is imperative that your mind is at the right place and you don't get bogged down by obstacles, and you don't get depressed, and you don't get to that point that you say, I don't know what to do. And I feel like you doing exercise put you at that state of good mental health.
Yeah, I learned mental fitness and mental capacity from athletics, and I'm able to take all my knowledge from athletics and transfer it to life. And it sounds cliche, but it works so well, and they go hand in hand, because life and achieving goals are just about work ethic.
Yep.
Work ethic, organization, your why, your drive,
Yeah.
right?
And I feel like in your case, Krysta, you achieve that mental health through being in nature.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yes.
Is there other places where you feel like
Man, we've already asked her enough questions.
I know. I'm sorry.
Why don't I?
You're scared of what question she's gonna ask you, eh?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, why don't I just flip that question around? on you?
I think that the way mental health in my experience works is reflecting. That's bogged down the number one thing that helped me. Reflecting by talking to myself when I'm going to sleep, or when I'm at the gym, when I am going out for hikes. I kind of talk to myself and say, okay, Manuel, what do you want to do?
And he talks out loud to himself.
Right.
And I started writing. I bought this book, right? And my idea was for this book for me to write down a story for my children on how my wife and I met and what the experiences that I've been through. But this book has helped me myself reflect on where I'm heading and what deficiencies I have in dealing with them in the mental side.
And how to change them.
And how to change them and open my mind to new ideas.
And this podcast derived from that idea. He's like, I want to create something that I can pass down to my kids. I want to create a guide for people that maybe are having the same issues as me, and I just want to share them and figure them out together.
Because mental health is something that is so tricky for a lot of people. They can really get into their head.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing that I feel was key in my mental health is getting rid of all social media with regards to being active in it. I don't intake any social media at all. And I didn't have a cell phone for like 3 years.
Me too.
And it's just having that is very powerful, that I can just disconnect from everything.
So you don't have a cell phone now?
I have a phone, but I can only access email because it's internet through Wi-Fi. So I don't have an active cell phone number. My wife does, and we share it. And it's very powerful. I'm telling you, like when I go, a lot of people at work, when they go to the bathroom and there's only 2 bathrooms, they take ages in the bathroom.
Because they're on their phone.
Because they're in their social media, swiping their
Double
phone.
tapping those Instagrams.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on, I need to go. My pelvic health is in danger here.
Danger. Oh man, that's inspiring. I've often thought about getting rid of my cell phone and maybe just getting a landline for more of those important calls.
Or sharing one with your partner.
Sharing one with my partner, because yeah, it's so easy to get
It's so easy to
hooked
get
on a
and
cell
it's
phone.
draining. It's
It's
so
not good
draining.
for your mental
it's
health.
not good for your mental
No.
health.
Wow,
at all.
good for you.
And so one thing that we just did is we're subcontracting out our social media for this podcast because I was gonna do it, but I was like, man, I really don't want to do this. This is draining because I don't like. I'm trying to get rid of limit my time on social media to begin with, and now in order to be successful as possible, we need to be active.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be active, and so we finally got a family member of mine, my cousin,
Yes.
to hop on board and
help with social media.
help with social media. Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. I don't manage my own social media for
I
my
remember that
podcast
was
either.
episode 5, something like that. Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
I brought on I have a team of volunteers now.
Yeah.
I have 2 volunteers that help me out, and it's great.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
That's
It's
awesome.
so nice.
It helps you get into the nitty gritty and take back and look at the bigger
Yeah.
picture and
Totally.
say, okay, what now?
And maintain balance. Like, how do you guys feel about maintaining balance with doing an episode a week?
I feel like it's been really good.
It's been okay.
Because we're doing it because it's a reason for us to get together and hang out and amongst our busy schedule. So it's not stressful.
It doesn't feel like a chore.
No, it doesn't feel like
No,
a chore. We're
doesn't
just going to
feel like a
hang out
chore.
and hang out with my best buddy and
Yeah.
A meaningful
have a
conversation.
meaningful conversation with people and not just each other.
Although we could talk for hours.
We talk for hours, and Hope gets mad at me when I come over. Sometimes she's like brushing her teeth. She's like, Brodi, you
Go home.
Yeah. Yeah. And Maddie and I are like at the door, like, gotta go, like, yeah, we gotta go and do this. Okay, see ya. Wait, I forgot about something. Yeah.
Aw, that's so special, though.
Yeah, and that's what we really. Our main goal is, or one of our strong goals is, to be able to enrich our relationships that we have and try to get the most out of every single relationship, not just our loves, our love life and our personal life, our friendship, our relationship with the environment, our family life, and try to make that as strong and complex in a good way as possible.
All right.
It's a great goal.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Any more things from the great Krysta?
I don't have anything right now.
No? Any tips, anything, the last comments, the last words of wisdom out there? Where can we find you? Yeah.
So you can
Yes.
find my website is globalphysio.ca.
Okay. We'll add it in the show notes.
You can add it in the show notes.
Yep.
And my email is globalphysiopodcast@gmail.com.
Okay, and your physio or your podcast is in our resources.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I work in Victoria, BC. I'm an independent contractor, so I run my own little business. You can contact me if you'd like me to come do physiotherapy for you in your home. I come to you just to help break down a barrier, help bring the resource
awesome.
to you. And you can also come see me at a clinic space called Rise Health, which is in Fernwood here in Victoria.
That's
I go
that's
there.
a block away from my house.
Perfect.
Corner of Bay and Fernwood.
Exactly. So I work there 5 days a week as well. And then you can find me in the mountains.
There you
Probably.
go. If you can.
Yeah.
I bet she goes fast.
And really high up. If you dare.
Yeah. And obviously social media.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Krysta Wark,
Krysta.
KrystaWark, and that's where I post my adventure pictures.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
And we have Global Physio Podcast, Facebook and Twitter as well. That I don't even remember the handles because it's not my thing. But you can find us there.
Yeah.
And then my podcast is on all podcasting apps.
Yeah, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all of those.
Exactly.
Same as this one.
Yeah. So I would say probably my last words of wisdom would be if you're dealing with anything to do with your health, whether it be pelvic health or otherwise, try to access somebody who can help you, and don't be afraid to, because we're doing it because we care so much and we're so passionate and we want you to access our help. That's why we're doing it. And that also applies to you trying to find your passion and your why. Just try a bunch of things. And what I've realized is that when you ask people for help or you ask for advice or questions, most people are incredibly willing to help guide you or to get you started in your journey.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Well, there you have it, folks.
There you have it, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
One
Thanks, Krysta.
last question.
Okay.
I want to climb Mount Everest at some point in my life.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about that?
I've thought about it. I don't know if it's on my bucket list because it's become so busy,
Yeah, that is true.
but it's pretty cool.
Well, there you have it. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful day.
Peace.
And please remember to be active in your community. Brody, come on. Keep going.
Remember to smile.
Remember to be kind and respect yourself, others, animals, and a beautiful planet.
And please, never stop adventuring for knowledge.
Until next time.
Peace.